You've been feeling it, haven't you? That strange stillness that follows every prayer. The weight that sits in your chest when you say, Ameen, and nothing moves. You look around, everyone else seems to be hearing from Allah, seeing signs, feeling peace. But you just feel quiet, like heaven turned down the volume on your life. And deep inside, you keep asking, Ya Allah, did you forget me? But what if I told you, the silence you hate is not the absence of His voice, it's the presence of His attention. Because sometimes Allah doesn't answer you through words, He answers you through waiting. He doesn't speak to your ears, He speaks to your state. He doesn't shout through noise, He whispers through stillness. You keep calling this distance, but He calls it training. He's teaching your soul to hear Him without proof. He's separating you from every false comfort, so that when He finally speaks, you'll know it's Him. That's why everything feels silent. Because He's talking to your spirit now, not your senses. So, if you feel forgotten, you're not. You're being spoken to in the oldest language heaven ever used. The language of silence that refines the soul. And before this video ends, you'll understand why He went quiet, and why His quietness was actually the loudest mercy of all. The silence that speaks Allah's name. You keep asking why nothing is changing, why your prayers sound tired now, why your heart feels heavier with each dua you whisper, why the tears don't bring the same peace they once did. You sit there, in the dark, wondering if your words are even reaching the sky anymore. You question if your voice still matters to the one who created it. But listen carefully. Silence is not His absence. It's His way of speaking to a heart that has grown too loud. When Allah goes silent, it's not because He's forgotten you. It's because He's calling you deeper. Deeper than your routine prayers. Deeper than your surface emotions. Deeper than your need for instant answers. He's saying, come closer, not with your words, but with your soul. Because when everything outside of you goes quiet, the only voice left is the one that was always meant to lead you, His. Every delay, every unanswered prayer, every moment that feels like the world has gone still, is not random. It's divine choreography. It's the sound of heaven rearranging your destiny in silence. When the world becomes too loud, you forget how to feel Allah's nearness. So He lowers the volume of your life. He removes the people who used to comfort you, not to leave you alone, but to leave you with Him. He takes away conversations, so you'll learn the beauty of a single whisper to your Lord. He slows your journey, so you'll notice how your soul still reaches for the light in the dark. You see, not every answer comes in the form of a miracle. Some come as peace when logic says you should have broken. Some come as patience when you thought you'd given up. And some come as tears that wash away the dust from your heart. That is how Allah speaks. Through quiet, through stillness, through moments that look like nothing is happening, when in reality, everything is being rewritten. The silence you hate so much is the space where Allah rebuilds you. He's not ignoring you. He's transforming you quietly. Because if He answered every prayer the moment you made it, you'd never grow strong enough to carry the blessings He's preparing. You'd never taste the sweetness of patience. You'd never understand the beauty of trusting the unseen. So He speaks through silence, because silence builds souls, not just moments. You think you're waiting for Him to reply, but sometimes He's waiting for you to stop talking long enough to finally hear Him. That ache you feel deep in your chest, that heaviness you can't explain, that pull that won't go away. That's not emptiness, it's recognition. Your soul recognizing its creator again. You've mistaken silence for absence, but Allah's silence is filled with sound. The sound of mercy being written, of angels recording your endurance, of a new chapter being prepared just beyond what you can see. Sometimes Allah doesn't answer immediately because His silence is the answer. He's saying, "Be still." The story isn't ready yet, but it's beautiful. Every time you whisper, "Ya Allah," and hear nothing back, remember, you're not talking to an empty sky. You're talking to the one who shaped it. And He hears you every breath, every tear, every tremble. His silence is not indifference, it's intention. He's teaching your heart what words could never explain. You might not see the reason now, but one day you'll look back and realize that His silence was the most loving reply He could have given, because through that silence, you stopped performing your faith and started living it. You learned to stop needing validation from signs and words and began trusting what your heart already knew, that Allah never left you. He was there, in the nights you couldn't sleep, in the mornings you didn't want to wake up, in the tears you tried to hide, in the whispers you thought went unheard. He was in all of it, quietly teaching you the art of listening. When Allah goes quiet, He's not punishing you, He's purifying you. He's softening the parts of you that the world hardened. He's turning pain into clarity and heartbreak into guidance. Because silence doesn't mean He's distant. It means He's working on you so deeply that words would only interrupt the process. When Allah hides, He's not gone. There comes a season in every believer's life where everything that once felt clear suddenly fades. The dua that once filled your chest with warmth now echoes back with silence. The prayer mat feels colder. Your heart beats, but it feels distant from the one it beats for. You start to wonder, did Allah leave me? You remember how it used to feel, those nights when His closeness wrapped around you like light, those moments when tears came easily and peace felt near. Now it's different. Now it's quiet. Now you can't feel anything. But the truth is, when Allah hides, He is not gone. He's closer than the breath you take, but He's teaching you to find Him in a new way. He's removing the sweetness so that you can taste sincerity. He's pulling away the feelings so you'll learn that faith is more than emotion. When the comfort disappears, the test begins. Because faith built on emotion collapses in silence, but faith built on trust survives the desert. You are in that desert now. It's dry, it's long, it's quiet, but even here, water flows underground. You just can't see it yet. That water is His mercy, moving beneath the surface of your pain, feeding roots you didn't know you had. He hides to reveal what can only grow in unseen soil. He hides to strengthen a faith that no storm can steal. Sometimes Allah covers Himself from your perception to remove your dependency on signs. Because if you only believed when you felt Him, you would worship your feelings, not your Lord. So He hides, not to break you, but to build you. Not to silence you, but to tune your heart to a frequency that only faith can hear. There's a kind of love that's loud, and there's a kind that whispers in absence. Allah's love is often the second. It comes wrapped in patience, in quiet mornings where nothing happens, in long nights where you stare at the ceiling and realize the only thing keeping you alive is hope. That's not emptiness. That's your heart learning to breathe without evidence. That's your soul learning to trust without proof. You keep searching for the feeling you once had, but feelings are guests, they come and go. Faith is the home that remains. So even if you feel nothing, keep praying. Even if you don't feel heard, keep calling. Even if you can't feel His love, keep loving Him anyway. Because love for Allah isn't measured by how loud your heart feels it. It's measured by how steady you stay when everything goes quiet. Sometimes He hides behind delay to teach you that waiting is worship. Sometimes He hides behind pain to teach you that tears are prayers too. And sometimes He hides behind loss, so you'll learn that what left you was never your sustenance. He was. You think He's far, but He's closer in hiding than He ever was in ease. Because in ease, you only thanked Him. In hiding, you search for Him. And those who search for Him with sincerity always find Him. The veil of silence is not rejection, it's protection. Allah veils Himself from those He loves to build them in ways that the world can't witness. Because not every transformation is meant to be seen. Some are sacred, hidden between you and Him. Every time you feel alone, remind yourself, you're not being punished. You're being personalized. This distance is custom-built for your soul. When Allah hides, He's still writing your story. Just on pages you're not allowed to read yet. The author hasn't left the pen. He's just quiet, because the next chapter needs suspense. You want answers now. You want clarity now. But He's saying, trust me in the dark, that's where believers are made. The stillness before revelation. There are moments in your life where everything suddenly slows down, not because you planned it, but because Allah pressed pause on the noise of your world. You were running before chasing, talking, posting, searching, and now it's all quiet. The phone doesn't ring as much. The opportunities seem delayed. Even your thoughts feel heavier, slower, and you sit there wondering, why is everything so still? But what if this stillness isn't emptiness? What if it's preparation? Every prophet was called into stillness before revelation. Before the light descended, there was darkness. Before clarity, there was confusion. Before movement, there was a deep pause, a holy silence that felt like abandonment but was actually transformation. That's where you are now. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. Allah is not ignoring you, He's incubating you. He's building something inside your heart that the world can't see yet. Sometimes, before Allah lifts you, He silences everything around you so that you stop hearing the world's opinions and finally hear the truth within your soul. Stillness feels like loneliness, but it's actually protection. It's the sacred waiting room between who you were and who you're about to become. Allah isolates before He elevates. He slows before He sends. He takes away your comfort before He gives you clarity. Because revelation can't descend into a crowded heart. It only falls upon the one who has made space for it. The one who sat in silence long enough to say, I don't know anymore, Ya Allah, but I trust you. And that's when the unseen begins to move. You may not notice it, but things are shifting behind the veil. Doors are being shaped that you haven't even dreamed of yet. Connections are being written that you'll one day call destiny. Your name is being mentioned in gatherings of angels, and yet you sit there feeling forgotten. That's how revelation always begins quietly. The prophet didn't know that the cave he sat in would become the birthplace of divine light. He just knew the world outside had grown too loud, and his heart needed silence to breathe. So if your life feels quiet now, if everything you knew has slowed to a crawl, don't fight it. Don't rush to escape it. Because this stillness you hate might be the cave where your purpose is about to descend. Sometimes Allah hides the next chapter until you're humble enough to receive it. He's not delaying you. He's detoxing you from distraction. He's teaching you that revelation isn't just about hearing new words. It's about becoming someone new. Every heartbreak, every delay, every silence is Him stripping away the layers of noise so your soul can finally hear what it was sent here for. In stillness, Allah teaches you patience not as waiting, but as transformation. Patience isn't sitting still. It's what happens inside you while you sit still. When the outside world pauses, the inner world awakens. You begin to notice your own breath, your own thoughts, and your own longing for something greater. That longing isn't weakness, it's a signal. It means your heart is ready to be spoken to. It means your soul has matured enough to understand His whispers. Because revelation isn't only for prophets, it's also for hearts that finally become quiet enough to listen. And right now, your stillness is proof that you're being invited to listen. The reason everything stopped working is because Allah wants to rebuild your connection with Him first. He's saying, I'm about to show you something, but you must stop moving long enough to see it. You wanted a sign, but the sign was the silence. You wanted movement, but the movement is happening within. You wanted change, but Allah is changing the one thing that matters most, your soul. The stillness before revelation feels like nothing, but it's where everything begins. It's where tears become prayers, and prayers become light. It's where you finally stop asking, why, and start whispering, I'm ready. This quiet season is not empty. It's full of unseen activity. Heaven doesn't sleep when you rest. Angels don't pause when you do. They move quietly, gently, arranging your destiny in perfect alignment with His will. That's why you feel uneasy in stillness, because something holy is unfolding beneath the surface. You are not waiting for a new season. You're being shaped for it. And the reason Allah silences everything around you is because He's about to make His voice unmistakable inside you. The delay that protects you. You begged for something with your whole heart. You stayed awake when the world slept, your forehead pressed to the ground, tears carving small rivers down your face. And when the sun rose, nothing had changed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the silence grew heavier. You started to wonder if Allah had forgotten your voice. You whispered again, a little softer this time, hoping maybe He would hear it differently. But still, nothing. That's when the doubt creeps in, that quiet thought that says, maybe this isn't meant for me. And you don't want to believe it, but the longer the delay stretches, the harder it becomes to hold hope in your hands. But what if the delay is not rejection? What if it's protection? Because sometimes Allah slows the journey, so the destination doesn't break you. He knows what your heart can carry, and He knows what would crush it. So He holds back the blessing, not because you don't deserve it, but because He loves you too much to give it too soon. You think you're waiting for something small, but He's building something enormous behind the curtain of time. He's aligning hearts, adjusting seasons, moving people in and out of your story. He's protecting you from unseen harm, from choices that would have looked perfect now, but would have poisoned your peace later. The delay you hate is the mercy you can't yet see. If He gave you what you wanted the first time you asked, you would have celebrated it for a moment, then cried over it for years. He's saving you from that. He's guarding your destiny, like a parent guards a child from a fire they don't understand. You cry, why not now? And Allah replies in silence, because the truth would scare you. You're not ready for what now would bring. You see, the delay isn't empty time. It's a workshop. It's where your soul learns patience, where your faith stretches and grows. It's where you stop treating Allah like a vending machine and start treating Him like a Lord who knows best. He delays not because He enjoys watching you wait, but because He loves watching you transform while waiting. The version of you that made that dua is not the version that will receive the answer. He's growing you into the person who can hold that blessing without losing Him. Every unanswered prayer is an invitation to trust deeper. Every not yet is an opportunity to say, even if you never give it, I'll still worship you. That's how saints are made, not in answered prayers, but in the patience that follows silence. When you feel the ache of waiting, remember that even the prophets waited. Musa waited in the desert. Yusuf waited in the prison. And yet, each delay became the bridge to greatness. You are walking that same bridge now, even if it shakes under your feet. The delay is not a closed door. It's a doorway that takes longer to open, because it leads somewhere holy. Right now, you see only the walls around you, but behind those walls is movement. The angels are not idle. The decree is not forgotten. It's just unfolding in the slow language of divine wisdom. You think nothing is happening, but heaven has never been this busy with your name. Every tear, every whisper, every time you resisted despair, they're all notes in the melody of a miracle being composed quietly. And one day, you'll look back and say, if he had answered me then, I would have missed this. You'll understand that the delay wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Allah was strengthening your spine, purifying your intentions, teaching you to love the giver more than the gift. So the next time you feel the pain of waiting, don't say, nothing is happening. Say, something is happening that I can't see, because it always is. The clock of heaven never stops. The ink of destiny never dries. The silence between your dua and its answer is filled with mercy too deep for this world to measure. You think your life is paused, but in truth, Allah is editing the next scene. He's removing the characters who don't belong there, rearranging the timing of events, making sure that when the curtain finally rises, the story will make sense. And in that moment, the one where everything finally falls into place, you'll realize he was never late. He was just writing perfection in slow motion. The mercy hidden in emptiness. You look around, and everything that used to fill you doesn't anymore. The room is the same, the city is the same, the routine is the same, but something inside feels hollow, like someone quietly removed the weight of meaning and left only space. You wonder if you broke somewhere you can't see. You wonder if you lost something you can't name. You wonder why your chest feels like a house after guests leave, quiet, clean, and strangely sad. But emptiness is not a curse. It's a clearing. Think of a garden that has been overgrown for years. Wild roots, thorns, plants that look nice but steal all the water. If the gardener loves that garden, he cuts things back until it looks bare. It looks harsh. It looks empty. But only because he's making room for what belongs. That is your heart right now, a garden under mercy. What left you was not punishment. It was pruning. You didn't fail. You were freed. You used to fill your hours with people who felt like warmth, but secretly burned slow. You used to carry stories that made you feel important, but quietly drained your soul. You used to run to noise every time your spirit asked for silence, because you were afraid of what the quiet might tell you. So the most loving one turned the volume down. One friendship faded, another door closed, a habit suddenly lost its taste. Plans that used to excite you became heavy to hold. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. A gentle hand removing what blocked your light. Emptiness is protective space. It is Allah saying, "Let me be enough, and see what returns to you transformed." You keep calling this season lonely, but look closer. Loneliness is where pretenders cannot breathe. Only what is real survives here. Without the constant messages, you started hearing your own thoughts again. Without the endless invitations, and you noticed which places your soul never wanted to go. Without the comfort of always having someone, you learned the weight and warmth of your own du'as. And even that ache you fear, oh, that slow ache that sits behind the ribs and watches you in silence. That ache is not empty. It is a lighthouse. It flashes with every breath saying, "Your heart is still alive. Keep coming." You ask, Why does it hurt if this is mercy? Because detox always hurts. Because the first nights without noise feel like winter. Because you're used to filling every open space with something. A screen, a call, a plan, a dream. Mercy sometimes arrives dressed like winter. Bare trees, cold air, long nights. But underground, roots are thickening, reaching deeper than they ever could in summer. That's your faith right now, growing where no one can see. Especially you. You want to feel strong. Allah wants to make you strong. Not strong because you never feel empty, but strong because emptiness no longer scares you. You used to pray for more. Now, for the first time, you're learning to pray for enough. Enough breath to say His name with sincerity. Enough stillness to hear the difference between desire and guidance. Enough clarity to stop chasing what doesn't love your soul. Do you remember the last time you laughed without performing it? Do you remember the last time you sat in silence and didn't reach for your phone? Do you remember the last time you told the truth to yourself and didn't run from it? Emptiness is where truth and courage meet, where you finally admit, I was filling my life so I wouldn't have to fix it. Where you confess, I was trying to keep people who kept me away from myself. Where you whisper, I wasn't hungry for attention, I was starving for peace. Listen to how your breath sounds when the room is quiet. Listen to how your thoughts slow when you stop arguing with what is. Listen to how calm your heart becomes when you say, if this emptiness is from you, make it a home for you. There are blessings that cannot land on crowded tables. There are revelations that will not enter a noisy house. There are kinds of love, pure, steady, God-anchored, that refuse to grow in rooms full of performance. So Allah empties the room, not to embarrass you, but to bless you, not to leave you with nothing, but to show you what everything is. You used to ask for signs. Now the sign is the space itself. Space to rest. Space to cry without a reason you can explain. Space to forgive yourself for the years you spent pretending you weren't tired. This is mercy, because mercy tells the truth gently. Mercy doesn't lie to you about what hurts. Mercy doesn't strap you to a life that's killing your spirit and call it loyalty. Mercy opens the door and waits while you decide to walk through. Some nights, the emptiness will feel like a heavy ceiling. On those nights, lay your hand on your chest and notice something is holding you. Not your plan, not your people. Something older, softer, closer. A nearness that doesn't need words. A nearness that doesn't come and go with attention. A nearness that isn't loud, but refuses to leave. That is your Lord, closer than your fear of being alone, closer than the memory of who left, closer than the doubt that visits after midnight. If you could see what emptiness is making room for, you would fall in love with the silence that scares you. You think you're losing time, but time inside mercy is never lost. It is invested. Every quiet hour is planting a forest you'll one day walk through in awe, saying, so this is what he was growing while I thought nothing was happening. People may ask where you have gone. Tell them you went inside to clean the house. Tell them the lights are off because the heart is resting. Tell them the door isn't closed, it's just guarded now. You will learn new boundaries here. The kind that say, I love you, but I love my peace more. The kind that say, I will help you, but not at the cost of my soul. The kind that say, if Allah is not in this, I won't be either. This is the mercy hidden in emptiness. It teaches you to choose with God in mind. It teaches you to hear the difference between a voice that wants you and a voice that wants to use you. It teaches you to sit at your own table and eat your own bread and still call it a feast, because contentment finally joined you. You will feel tempted to fill the space again, to reach for the old rush, the old attention, the old comfort. Smile kindly at the temptation and let it pass. You are not starving, you're healing. Every day you stay with the emptiness. Something bright returns quietly. The ability to enjoy small things. The natural smile, the easy laugh, the steady breath in prayer that doesn't beg, it simply belongs. You will wake up one morning and realize you haven't checked who checked on you. You will sit with your tea and notice you didn't need a message to feel loved. You will look at your to-do list and see that half of it was never yours, and you will delete it without apology. Emptiness teaches holy subtraction. It removes what doesn't serve your journey to the one. It frees your hands so you can finally carry what was always meant for you. And when new people come, and they will, because mercy draws what is real, you won't greet them with hunger. You will greet them with peace. You will no longer ask, will they stay? You will ask, does my soul stay close to Allah when they're here? If yes, you'll make space. If no, you'll make dua and make distance. This is how emptiness becomes a compass. It points you to what brings you alive in God and away from what only wakes your ego. If today feels too quiet, say thank you. If tonight feels too long, light a small lamp in your heart and call it hope. If your hands feel empty, open them. Sometimes that's all mercy needs, an open place to land. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not abandoned. You are being carved into a vessel that can carry gentleness without spilling it, wisdom without showing off, love without losing self-respect. And when the filling comes, when Allah begins to place people, work, and blessings back into your life, you'll notice something different this time. Nothing sits on the throne that belongs to Him. Nothing steals the light. Nothing commands your breath more than His name. That's when you'll know the emptiness did its job. It didn't just remove what hurt you. It returned you to the one who heals you. The surrender inside the quiet. There comes a moment when fighting the silence becomes too heavy. You've begged, reasoned, cried, argued with fate itself, and all the doors stay still. That's when something deep inside sighs, not in defeat, but in surrender. You stop asking why. You stop chasing when. You start breathing now. Surrender is not weakness, it is wisdom learned through exhaustion. It's the quiet realization that maybe the path was never meant to bend to your will, because your will was too small for the story being written. In the beginning, you resist. You call it patience, but it's bargaining. You tell yourself you're waiting for Allah to change the situation, when, in truth, He's waiting for you to change within it. You don't see the beauty of surrender right away. At first, it feels like falling apart. Your heart feels thin. Your prayers feel recycled. You watch other people move ahead, while you're frozen in place, still repeating, Ya Allah, please. But slowly the storm inside softens. You stop wrestling with the silence and begin to rest in it. You notice that pain isn't as sharp when you stop labeling it unfair. You realize that surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means giving over. You used to think peace would come when circumstances changed. Now you're learning that peace comes when you change, and in the middle of circumstances. The surrender inside the quiet is sacred. It's the space where your heart lays down its weapons and finally admits, I can't control what you've already written. And that confession, that soft, trembling truth, becomes the key that unlocks a kind of calm you've never felt before. Because real calm isn't found when life makes sense. It's found when you stop demanding that it must. Sometimes Allah doesn't remove the mountain. He removes your fear of climbing it. Sometimes He doesn't fix the storm. He teaches you how to breathe under rain. That's surrender, not escape, not despair. Just trust that whispers louder than worry. You start to see the pattern. Every delay that once felt cruel was actually an invitation to depend on him more deeply. Every no was a redirection toward something safer. Every silence was a mirror showing your own restlessness. And in that mirror, you see who you really are. Not the image the world claps for, but the servant who's finally tired enough to rest in her Lord's hands. Surrender doesn't arrive with fireworks. It arrives quietly, like dawn after a long night. It doesn't announce, "I'm here." It simply replaces panic with presence. You begin to wake up lighter. Not because the problem disappeared, but because your resistance did. You still walk through uncertainty, but now each step feels guided instead of forced. That's what the quiet was always trying to teach you. It wasn't punishing you, it was preparing you to carry peace through chaos. The world tells you to fight harder. Faith tells you to trust deeper. And there's a difference. Fighting says, "I can do it." Trust says, "He already has." The longer you live, the more you realize that control was never peace. It was just anxiety dressed up as effort. True peace comes when you finally hand everything back and say, "Here, you drive. I'm done pretending I know the road." That's the moment heaven leans closer. That's the moment the angels write, "This heart has surrendered." And that's when unseen doors begin to open, not because you pushed them, but because you stopped pushing everything else. You begin to notice small mercies again, the way light filters through the curtains at dawn, the way your breath feels like a gift instead of proof of waiting, the way ordinary moments hold pieces of peace. Nothing outside changed, everything inside did. The quiet you once feared becomes familiar. It stops feeling like emptiness and starts feeling like a place where Allah sits with you in secret. You realize that maybe He was never silent. He was just speaking in a tone too soft for a restless heart. When the noise of desire fades, you hear Him everywhere. In the rustle of trees, in the hum of the night, in the heartbeat that still believes. That's the miracle of surrender. You stop chasing proof, and proof begins to follow you. There's no longer a war between what you want and what He writes. You start waking up and saying, "Whatever you choose for me today, let it make me closer to you." And suddenly, even pain becomes a messenger. Even delay becomes a doorway. Even loss becomes a translation of love. Because once you surrender, you see that Allah's plans were never against you. They were always protecting you from smaller versions of peace. You used to say, "I can't live without this." Now you say, "If it leaves, it means I don't need it to live." You used to ask, "When will things get better?" Now you ask, "What are you teaching me through this?" Surrender changes the questions first. Then it changes your life. You learn that being held by Allah doesn't always feel like comfort. Sometimes it feels like pruning, sometimes like distance, but always like love. You look back on the things you lost, people, opportunities, dreams, and realize that the hands that took them were the same hands that now hold you still. There's a sweetness hidden in accepting what hurts, a dignity in saying, "I don't understand, but I trust." That sentence alone can make the heavens move in your favor. Because when a servant stops demanding and starts depending, mercy rushes in quietly. You begin to love simplicity. You no longer need to explain your silence to anyone. You no longer rush to prove your worth. You start living slower, breathing deeper, and you feel wealth in things that money can't measure. Clarity, gratitude, gentleness. You stop asking Allah to give you what you want. You start asking Him to remove the want that distracts you from Him. That's when peace begins to pour in, not as noise, but as stillness so complete that tears fall without sadness. This is what surrender really means. To be content with mystery, to believe that delay is protection, and to understand that heartbreak was guidance wearing a disguise. One day, you'll stand in the same place where you once begged for relief and smile, because you'll see how everything you thought was falling apart was actually falling into place. You'll whisper, "If losing control gave me you, then every loss was worth it." And Allah will fill your heart with a quiet joy, the kind that doesn't depend on outcomes, the kind that stays even when everything else leaves. That is the reward of surrender. Not that life becomes perfect, but that peace stops needing conditions. You will move through your days lighter. You will love people without attachment. You will plan without panic. And when storms come again, because they will, you'll no longer say, "Why me?" You'll say, "Guide me." And guidance will arrive, not in thunder, but in a whisper you now know how to hear. The whisper that says, "I was always here, in the quiet you feared, and now that you trust me there, nothing can ever take you away from me again." The unanswered dua that became guidance. You asked with everything you had. You timed your prayers to the quietest hours, and when the city slept and the sky felt closest. You shaped your words carefully, as if the right sentence could unlock the door. You told yourself, "If I ask with enough tears, the answer will come." And when it didn't, your chest learned a new kind of silence. You kept going. Another night, another plea, another promise that you'd be better, stronger, more grateful, if only that door would open. But it stayed shut with a gentleness that still hurt. There's a place in the heart where disappointment settles, like dust in a room no one visits anymore. You stopped going there for a while. You tried to forget the dream so it wouldn't ache. You convinced yourself that wanting less would mean hurting less. But deep down, you knew it wasn't gone. It had simply changed shape. What if the door didn't open because there was a cliff on the other side? What if the person you begged for it was a beautiful road leading away from yourself? What if the job you chased it would have paid you in stress and stolen years? What if the miracle you demanded would have untied the knots holding your life together? Unanswered prayers are not empty. They are barricades built by mercy. They look like refusal, but they function like shields. There are prayers that save us by arriving, and there are prayers that save us by never arriving. This was the second kind. You thought you needed proof that you were heard, but the silence itself was proof. It was proof that your life was being guarded from the version of good that would have quietly undone you. Think of a traveler begging for a certain road because it looks straight and bright. He can see far, so he feels safe. But the map the guide holds shows a sinkhole halfway down that path, wide and hungry. The traveler begs, the guide refuses. The traveler cries, the guide holds the refusal steady, not because he enjoys the pain, but because he can see what the traveler cannot. That's what your unanswered dua really was. A hand on your shoulder in the dark, turning you before you stepped where the ground disappears. Some hurts don't look like hurts at first. Some protection doesn't look like protection until years pass. You will grow into the kind of clarity that thanks the doors that didn't open. You asked for a person who felt like home. You didn't know your heart would have had to live outside to keep them. You asked for a stage that looked like purpose. You didn't know the spotlight was hot enough to burn truth to ash. You asked for relief, immediate and total. You didn't know that the pain was draining poison you would have carried for decades. We measure goodness by how quickly we get what we want. He measures goodness by how safely we reach who we're meant to be. Unanswered dua is guidance written in a language you learn over time. In the beginning, you only hear no. Later, if you keep walking, you begin to hear the full sentence. No, because this other door is yours. You don't see the other door right away. That is part of the training. You are asked to walk with a heart that stays loyal, even when the map looks blank. You are asked to love the guide more than the route. And something begins to shift. You stop praying to bend reality around your plans. You start praying to be bent around wisdom. You stop saying, "Give me this." And you start saying, "Keep me close, whatever the cost." This is when the path starts to show its quiet turns. The sign does not appear as fireworks. It appears as a small peace where there used to be a storm. It appears as a conversation you didn't plan and that opens a window you didn't know existed. It appears as a new skill, a new patience, a new softness. All the inner furniture a future needs. You discover that guidance is less about being moved and more about being made. Unanswered dua made you. It stretched your faith past feelings. It replaced panic with presence. It taught you how to sit in the middle of not knowing without tearing yourself apart. Then one morning, the world looks slightly different, not because the streets changed, but because your gaze did. You start to notice paths you were too desperate to see before. You follow one, hesitant but hopeful. It doesn't look like the dream you asked for. It looks quieter. It looks smaller. It feels truer. This is the first turn of guidance. From loud desire to quiet alignment. You say yes to something you would have ignored last year. You meet someone who speaks to your soul without asking it to shrink. You take work that doesn't impress anyone, but leaves you with a clean heart when you sleep. You attend to small acts of goodness that don't post well, and strangely, your life starts to feel bigger. Meanwhile, the old door loses its shine. You can still see why you loved it, but you can also see the cost now. You realize you were asking to be blessed in a way that would have made you need blessing even more. The refusal begins to feel holy. There are prayers that were never meant to be answered as asked. They were meant to turn you in the asking. You thought you were asking for a destination. You were being given a direction. "Make me whole," you meant. "Let me show you how," he answered. And the first step was away from what you swore you couldn't live without. Unanswered dua teaches a gentler strength. Not the strength of control, but the strength of trust. Not the strength to force doors, but the strength to wait for the ones that open in peace. You begin to speak to your own heart differently. "I know you wanted that, but we belong where we can breathe. I know you miss them, but we were not meant to disappear to be loved. I know you're tired, but look how far we've come without breaking." And the heart listens. It softens. It stops pounding on closed wood. It leans against the doorframe and finally rests. That's when guidance becomes visible. A message arrives that feels like timing. A friend introduces a possibility you did not invent. A quiet urge to learn, to build, to serve, pulls you toward a work that fits like a key in your bones. This is the second turn of guidance, from waiting for a path to becoming one. You realize the life you begged for would have made you smaller. You realize the love you chased would have cost you your voice. You realize the stage you wanted would have kept you performing forever. The no you hated starts to glow with meaning. Unanswered dua is how the soul learns its real shape. It draws the outline by removing what doesn't match. It frees your hands so you can finally hold what was always yours. And when you look back, you see the thread. How each refusal was a redirection. How each delay was protection. How each silence was a sentence in a language you can finally read. You whisper, almost laughing at the beauty of it, "I would have chosen differently, and I would have been wrong." The heart answers with a warmth you didn't know it could hold. "Thank you for stopping me when I begged you not to." This is the quiet miracle. Your prayer was not ignored. It was translated. What you asked for in words was delivered in wisdom. You asked for a door, you were given a way. You asked for someone to stay. You were taught to stay with yourself. You asked for a quick relief. You received a lasting peace. And now, when you pray, the tone has changed. You still ask for what you hope for. Dreams are part of being alive. But you add a sentence that keeps you safe. Write what keeps me near you, even if I don't understand it yet. Guidance smiles when it hears that, because that's the kind of heart that won't mistake another closed door for abandonment. It will see it for what it is, a hand turning the face toward light. You start to love the guide more than the gift. You start to love the journey more than the arrival. You start to love the kind of strength that doesn't need to win to feel complete. And when the right door finally opens, the one that fits your spirit like a home you've never visited, you'll walk through without shaking, not because you were never afraid, but because you learned to be led. That is how an unanswered dua becomes guidance. By refusing what is less, it delivers you to what is true. You keep walking with that strange, quiet gratitude that only healed people know. The road still curves, but it no longer scares you. You no longer ask, "Why did he say no?" You whisper, "Thank you for saving me from what I couldn't see." Time has turned the ache into insight. You start noticing that every prayer you once begged for had an echo somewhere else. The door you wanted didn't open, but another one did. One that asked less of your pride and more of your soul. The person who left taught you detachment. The opportunity that slipped away taught you humility. The delay that almost broke you taught you patience that can hold mountains. Every no became a new language of faith. You look at yourself now calmer, slower, more aware. You don't rush answers anymore. You host the questions kindly. You let them sit beside you like guests who will leave when wisdom arrives. And when they leave, they always leave a gift behind peace. That's what unanswered prayers do. They turn panic into prayer without expectation. They turn control into curiosity. They turn pain into closeness. You begin to see how every disappointment carried direction inside it. The heart that once broke open became a doorway. The silence that once scared you became a sanctuary. The tears that once begged for release became rivers feeding new faith. You once believed that unanswered meant unseen. Now you know that unanswered meant protected. Allah never withheld to punish. He withheld to prepare. If He had given everything you asked for, when you asked for it, you would have settled in places meant only to be passed through. So He took away the temporary to make room for the timeless. Guidance is rarely loud. It arrives quietly through nudges, coincidences, subtle turns. It arrives when you begin to listen without insisting. When you stop demanding and start observing. When you stop chasing and start trusting. One morning, you wake up and realize the peace you've been praying for has been living inside you this whole time. It wasn't the world that needed to soften, it was you. And now that it has, the world looks softer too. You begin to thank Allah for things not happening. You thank Him for the silence that taught you how to hear. You thank Him for the pauses that taught you how to breathe. You thank Him for the delays that taught you how to live without rushing destiny. That's when you understand the greatest answered dua, and was the patience to wait without losing faith. Your heart finally rests in a truth it can't unlearn. What is written for you will never need begging, and what isn't will never stay, no matter how tightly you hold it. So you loosen your grip and lift your hands, not to demand, but to receive whatever shape His mercy takes next. And the sky, which once felt closed, feels wide again. The air tastes lighter. The silence feels like home. Because the dua was never wasted. It was seed. And the garden it grew was you. You were never alone. There are seasons where you truly believe you've been left behind. When the room goes quiet after heartbreak, when the nights feel endless, when the mirror shows someone you no longer recognize, you look around and there's no one left to call, no one who really listens, no one who stays long enough to understand. And somewhere deep inside you whisper, "Ya Allah, are you still with me?" Then comes silence, the kind that hums louder than noise, the kind that makes you question if heaven forgot your address. But that silence you hear is not absence. It's presence wearing a softer tone. It's the sound of mercy standing close enough to touch, but quiet enough to test your trust. Because sometimes Allah hides in plain sight. He hides inside the things you overlook. The breath that never left you, the heartbeat that never stopped, and the sunrise that keeps showing up even after your world ended. He hides in the people who appear when you stop chasing. He hides in the small kindness that finds you on an ordinary day and reminds you that love never left, it just changed form. You think you're alone because you can't see him, but blindness is part of faith's beauty. The unseen isn't empty. It's where your soul learns how to see differently. Every time you broke and thought no one noticed, he did. Every time you cried yourself to sleep, he counted each tear, not to measure your pain, but to record your endurance. Every time you almost gave up but didn't, he smiled upon your strength, because that moment of quiet courage was worship too. Loneliness was never a punishment. It was an invitation. An invitation to meet him where no one else could reach you. An invitation to discover the kind of companionship that doesn't fade when the world forgets your name. You call it emptiness, but he calls it space to arrive. You call it silence, but he calls it a private conversation. You call it loss, but he calls it a return to what never leaves. There were nights you whispered, "If you're really here, show me." And maybe he did, just not in the way you expected. Not with a miracle of light, but with a morning you somehow survived. Not with a voice from the clouds, but with a peace that arrived quietly after the tears ran out. That was him. It was always him. Every quiet survival was a conversation. Every breath through pain was a prayer. Every bit of strength that appeared out of nowhere was a verse written just for you. You were never walking alone. You were walking with a presence too patient to announce itself. He could have made faith easy, but he made it real instead. He let you walk through nights that taught your heart how to feel him without sight, how to love him without proof, how to stay when nothing around you did. And through that staying, you learned the secret. You don't find Allah at the end of struggle. You find him in it. You found him in the hospital waiting room when you didn't know what to pray anymore. You found him in the silence after heartbreak, when the love you lost taught you what pure love really means. You found him in the job that slipped away, in the friend that stopped calling, in the plan that fell apart. All those collapses were construction. He was building something stronger in their ruins. You. What felt like the end was never the end. It was the bend in the road where heaven took your hand. You just couldn't see it yet. He was there in every closed door, saying, "Not this one, it's too small for who you're becoming." He was there in every silence, saying, "Keep walking. I'm ahead, not behind." He was there in every loss, saying, "If they could leave, they were never the bridge I chose for you." Every heartbreak was a divine rerouting. Every delay was a lesson in divine patience. Every unanswered dua was a whisper saying, "You don't need to see me to trust me, and one day you'll understand." You were never alone. You were being escorted through darkness by a light you couldn't name. You were being carried by mercy in silence so deep, you mistook it for distance. You see, loneliness is not the absence of people, it's the absence of awareness. And awareness grows only in stillness. That's why Allah took the noise away, so you could finally notice what had been beside you all along. You don't realize how constant His care is until you look back and see how much of your story you actually survived without knowing how. That's the proof of divine companionship. Not in the moments you felt strong, but in the moments you felt nothing and still made it through. And maybe that's the secret He wanted you to learn, that His love doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove itself with miracles or visions. It exists quietly, like the pulse in your wrist, unseen, but always there. That's the golden whisper you hear in stillness, the one that says, "You were never forgotten." The one that says, "Even when you ran from me, I followed gently." The one that says, "Even when you stopped talking to me, I still answered." He doesn't abandon hearts that seek Him. He only hides long enough for them to rediscover their depth. Every time you thought, "No one understands," He understood. Every time you thought, "I can't do this anymore," He carried what you couldn't. Every time you whispered, "Why me?" He whispered back, "Because I trust you with this test." You were being shaped, not shattered. You were being rebuilt, not replaced. You were being prepared for a life that required a deeper kind of faith, one that could stand in storms without losing its prayer. And even now, as you read or listen to these words, He's near, closer than you think, listening to the thoughts you haven't spoken yet. He knows the next worry before you name it. He knows the next tear before it falls. He knows how tired you are of being strong and how much you secretly long to be held. You are held. You always were. Every breath, every dawn, every heartbeat that brought you here was proof of that unseen embrace. The golden whisper was never about discovering something new. It was about remembering what never left. You spent so long searching for a sign, something to tell you that you were seen. You looked at the sky for movement, at people for warmth, at time for mercy. But the sign was never outside. It was always within you. The fact that you still reached for Allah, even when you felt nothing. Do you know how powerful that is? To keep calling out to the one you can't see. To stay faithful when faith feels like holding smoke. That's not weakness, that's divine intimacy. Because love built in silence is the strongest kind. It doesn't depend on evidence, it grows through trust. And you, without realizing it, became one of those people who loved Allah without needing to always feel His love. That's a rare kind of beauty. A love that stays when the light flickers. He watched you try. He watched you sit in prayer with a shaking voice. He watched you whisper His name when you thought He wasn't listening. He watched you hold on to faith by a thread and still call it hope. And He loved you for it. There's a verse that never needed to be written on paper. It was written in your survival. It said, "Even when you thought you were forgotten, you were carried." All those moments when you were sure you had no strength left. Something invisible kept you standing. Something gave you breath when your lungs were heavy. Something made you smile again, even slightly, after you swore you never would. That something was not random. It was mercy moving quietly through your days. Sometimes Allah sends ease not as miracles, but as small moments of peace. A calm morning after weeks of chaos. A stranger's kindness that touches something deep inside. A song of the wind that feels like reassurance. That's Him disguised in simplicity. He was there when the friend you trusted broke your heart. He was there when the job you loved slipped away. He was there when you sat in your room, hands on your face, trying to hold yourself together. You didn't notice, but every tear fell into His care. Every sob vibrated in a space He was already in. He never left. Loneliness only taught you how to recognize His nearness. Now you can feel Him in everything. In the quiet hum of dawn, in the way your chest expands when you remember gratitude, in the way life begins to look softer even without changing. This is the part of the journey where the silence turns into music, where everything that hurt begins to make sense, where you realize you were never waiting for him to show up. He was waiting for you to slow down enough to see him. You start to live differently now. You don't panic at delay anymore. You don't chase what leaves. You trust timing with a steady heart, because you know who writes it. You speak to Allah not with desperation, but with familiarity. You say, "You know my heart better than I do. If it's meant for me, keep it gentle. If it's not, keep me peaceful." And peace always comes. This is the golden whisper. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue. It just arrives softly, saying, "Everything that left was meant to. Everything that stayed is enough. And everything that's coming will arrive right on time." The whisper reminds you that even in heartbreak, you were being reintroduced to real love, his love. That even in failure, you were being redirected to purpose. That even in loss, you were being given something greater awareness. You begin to smile through the tears now, because they no longer represent pain. They represent proof. Proof that you were guided even when you were grieving. Proof that Allah trusted you with struggle because He saw strength in you. Proof that your wounds were just classrooms where faith was taught. The quiet no longer scares you. It feels like presence now. You realize you don't need constant signs anymore. The biggest sign is that you're still here, still believing, still capable of feeling warmth in the same heart that once froze over. And one day, you will walk into a sunrise that feels like recognition. You'll stop for a moment, close your eyes, and realize you made it through every night that swore you wouldn't. You'll breathe deeply and whisper, "So this is what he was doing all along." You'll look back at the version of you who cried in prayer rooms, who begged in silence, who doubted and still hoped, and you'll want to hold them and say, "He was there the whole time." Because he was. He always was. He always will be. That's the golden whisper. Not the promise of a life without pain, but the assurance of a God who never leaves, even when everything else does. So, when the next storm comes, you won't fear it. You'll smile softly and say, "I know this part. This is where he hides me until the sun returns." And it will return, because it always does. And when it does, you'll realize that every lonely night, every unanswered prayer, every tear that fell in secret, was not just seen, but used. Used to build a heart that could hold peace without breaking. Used to write a story that only divine hands could write. Used to teach you that being alone with Allah, it was never being alone at all. That's the final truth. You were never forgotten, never unseen, never unloved. You were being spoken to in silence, healed in stillness, and carried in every moment you thought you stood alone. And when your soul finally understands this, it doesn't just find peace, it becomes peace. There's a moment near the end of every storm when the rain doesn't stop, but you stop running from it. You let it fall. You close your eyes, and instead of asking when it will end, you whisper, "If this is where you meet me, then let it rain." That moment, that surrender, is when everything changes. Because it's no longer about escape. It's about presence. You start to understand that what you once called waiting was actually walking. Walking with the unseen beside you through a path you didn't know was sacred. The golden whisper lives in that awareness, the soft knowing that you were being watched, guided, and loved through every turn. You remember the times your heart broke so deeply, you thought it would never mend. But here you are, feeling lighter in places that once ached. You remember the nights you thought faith had left you, and now, It's the only reason you can breathe again. You didn't lose anything permanent. You lost illusions, you lost attachments, you lost versions of yourself that couldn't carry what was next. And in their place, Allah gave you clarity, the kind that doesn't shout, the kind that whispers. You're finally becoming who I wrote you to be. You start to see how everything was working together. Every silence, every tear, every closed door. It wasn't random, it was precision. The kind only divine love could design. He delayed so your heart could detox. He hid so your faith could grow roots instead of wings. He quieted the world so you could hear the truth, echoing from the place it was always meant to within you. Now you see it. You were never unloved if you were being rewritten. Your pain wasn't punishment, it was purification. The loneliness wasn't a void, it was an appointment. And your unanswered prayers, they were letters being rerouted to the version of you who could finally receive them without breaking. You were being taught the difference between love and dependency, between hope and control, between prayer and transaction. Faith became no longer something you performed. It became something you lived. You began to pray differently, not louder, not longer, just deeper, no longer chasing signs. You started to become one, a walking reminder that Allah never leaves His servants, even when the world does. And suddenly, your silence turned into service. You started showing compassion you never had before. You started forgiving people you thought you never could. You started understanding that others are hurting the same way you were once held. That's the mark of divine companionship. You start treating people the way He treated you, with quiet mercy. Every conversation you now have carries a piece of Him. Every step you take feels guided, not because you know the plan, but because you know the planner. You no longer fear uncertainty. It feels like trust now. You no longer resent delays. They feel like preparation now. You no longer crave validation. You crave alignment. And that's when you realize this was never about the pain leaving. It was about you learning to live inside peace, even while the pain stays. Because peace is not the absence of storms. Peace is walking with the one who commands them. You look back at your life and see 1,000 moments you thought were coincidences. Now you see fingerprints of mercy all over them. The time you missed that flight, the friendship that faded, the plan that collapsed. Each one was a small rescue disguised as loss. Even the heartbreak that almost ended you was a beginning you couldn't see yet. It was Allah saying, I'm not taking this away to hurt you. I'm taking it away so you can finally have me completely. And now that you do, you understand what true safety feels like. It's not in being surrounded, it's in being seen. Not in being known by the world, but in being known by the one who made it. You finally understand what it means to trust without evidence, to believe without sight, to love without guarantees. That's faith, the kind that survives the dark and glows quietly in your chest. When everything else fades, He was with you in the heartbreak that broke your pride. He was with you in the silence that scared you. He was with you in the waiting that matured you. He was with you in the disappointment that humbled you. And He is with you now, in this very breath, in this exact moment, in this stillness that feels safe again. That's the golden whisper, not a sound you hear, but a peace you feel. It doesn't argue with your pain. It just holds it gently until it understands. You realize now, Allah didn't promise a life without heartbreak. He promised that you'd never go through it alone. He didn't promise constant light. He promised guidance in the dark. He didn't promise ease. He promised meaning. And that's enough. That's more than enough. Because once you know He's with you, you stop needing proof. You stop needing people to understand. You stop explaining your silence. You simply live. peacefully, purposefully, knowing that every breath is a reminder that He's near. And if tonight still feels heavy, if your heart still aches, remember, even that ache is conversation. Even your pain has His name written through it. Even your confusion has direction hiding inside it. Whisper this truth softly to yourself. You were never forgotten. You were being formed in silence. You were being sculpted in stillness. You were being carried when your legs gave up. You were being loved through lessons, not words. The same Allah who saw you cry alone is the same Allah writing joy into your next dawn. And when that dawn arrives, you'll finally understand why it had to be night first. Because He wanted you to see that you never needed to fear the dark when the light was always within you. That's the end of the journey. Not an ending at all, but a beginning of awareness. The moment you finally hear the whisper clearly, my servant, you were never alone, not for a single breath, not for a single step. Even in your silence, I was speaking to you. Even in your tears, I was cleansing you. Even in your waiting, I was walking with you. And when that truth settles in your chest, you no longer need words. You no longer need proof. You simply close your eyes, breathe, and smile, because you finally know you were never alone. You never will be. You made it here, through the waiting, through the nights when you almost gave up, through the prayers that came back as silence. You made it here to this moment, and that's not an accident. You were meant to, because this whole time Allah wasn't ignoring you. He was teaching you to hear without sound, to trust what you couldn't see, to walk when you couldn't feel your feet, to love Him even when you thought He was far. And now you know He was never far. He was inside every breath you took to survive, inside every heartbreak that purified your soul, inside every delay that saved you from destruction. He was in your silence. He was in your waiting. He was in your pain. And tonight, He's in your peace. You were never forgotten, never abandoned, never unloved. You were simply being rebuilt in ways only heaven understood. So when the silence comes again, and it will, don't panic. Don't doubt. Just close your eyes and whisper, "You're here, aren't you?" And feel that calm wash over you. Because He always answers that question the same way. Not with thunder, not with miracles, just with stillness that feels safe again. That's your answer. That's your sign. That's the proof that you were never alone. Soft pause. Music fades even softer. If this message reached you tonight, maybe it wasn't random. Maybe heaven wanted to remind you the silence you're living in isn't empty. It's sacred. Because sometimes Allah doesn't send you a voice. He sends you a moment. And this moment was for you.